Hi, I'm Suniti, and today I'm going to be presenting on the topic Is there propaganda in the film industry? More specifically, I will be examining military propaganda within the film industry. These are all the topics that will be covered in the presentation. Propaganda is a method of communication used historically to affect public opinion and behavior. Social media has become a popular medium for propaganda in recent times, but the film industry has been used as a medium for military propaganda since the early days of cinema. It has been used to shape public perception of military conflicts and wars, and the United States Office of War Information even had a unit dedicated solely to Hollywood. Moving on to the reason for this presence of propaganda in films. In the past, the primary goal of military propaganda in films has been to create a sense of patriotism and national pride among the audience. By portraying the military as heroic and selfless, filmmakers aim to promote support for military actions and wars. Film propaganda can be used to instill a sense of us as good versus them as evil in the audience. Films are also used to recruit people from military or civilian service in the war effort. These points will be explained with a few examples in the next slide. Some examples of military propaganda in films include the World War II film Casablanca. It is one of the most famous examples of military propaganda in film. The film depicts the American military as valiant and noble in its fight against the Nazi regime. This goes back to what I said in the previous slide, with film propaganda being used to instill a sense of us versus them. The movie also encourages sacrifice and duty to one's country, aiming to promote patriotism and encouraging civilian service in the war effort, as mentioned before. Apocalypse Now, a Vietnam War film, is another example. The film portrays the Vietnamese as savages and barbarians, justifying the brutal tactics used by American soldiers during the war, again instilling an us versus them dynamic. It also promotes the idea of the American military as heroic and necessary for protecting the interests of the country, aiming to promote national pride. Moving on to the effectiveness of military propaganda in films. Propaganda in films has the potential to shape public opinion and increase support for military actions. Filmmakers can easily sway the audience's perception of military conflicts by appealing to emotions and instilling a sense of national pride. On the opposing hand, it can be dangerous. Filmmakers can create a distorted perception of reality by promoting a one sided view of military conflicts, leading to blind support for unjustified military actions and wars. Propaganda has the power to promote a legitimate war like the World War II or a flawed conflict like the Vietnam War. Critics argue that military propaganda in movies encourages a restricted and biased understanding of military conflicts while ignoring the complex and subtle political and social dynamics at play. When criticizing Marvel films and their portrayal of the military, Joshua McCoy stated, even movies that don't have a direct marketing connection to the US military have a noticeable bias towards it. Critics also claim that military propaganda in films glorifies war and violence rather than promoting peaceful conflict resolution, which is a reasonable critique, and many blog posts have also been written to answer the question of do movies glorify war, with all research agreeing that yes, they do indeed glorify war. The Vice News video, The Subtle and Not So Subtle Military Propaganda in Movies, delves into the military Hollywood relationship. The video shows how the United States military uses film as a propaganda tool to influence public opinion and recruit new soldiers. The video also explains how the military assists filmmakers in exchange for positive portrayals of the military in their works. It also includes interviews with filmmakers, veterans, and experts on the impact of military propaganda in films. And it investigates the historical context of this relationship as well as the ethical implications of using films as a propaganda tool. I'm going to talk in detail about a few things mentioned in this video and two major interviews that Vice conducted that would put into perspective the dynamic of the relationship between the US military and the film industry in the United States specifically. Renee Hobbs, the professor of communication studies at the University of Rhode Island, explains the dynamic between the US military and Hollywood as an exchange, with Hollywood receiving props and the military receiving the ability to control the narrative. She explained this relationship by saying that Hollywood essentially comes knocking on the door of the Department of Defense, saying, we're going to make a movie and we need 12 different kinds of Air Force airplanes. The business deal is essentially that the military will give the access to all this great gear and technology, these great location shots, and in exchange for that, the military gets to control the message that is communicated. She also added that when people go into a cinema or watch Netflix and think it's just entertainment, that is perhaps the most dangerous belief to hold. I agree with her and believe that a person needs to think about the business motives and the ideological and value motives while watching any film based on war. Because in the case of the United States, it's in the interest of the US government to ensure strong positive public opinion for their armed forces, and they do so through these popular films. Vice reported that the production teams behind each of these movies ran their script through the US military, and major and minor edits were made by the military to improve and modify their portrayal. These are a small number out of what could be hundreds of films that have been influenced by the military in the US alone. The team that evaluates the message that is finally portrayed in a film is the Department of Justice's Entertainment Media Office. Glenn Roberts is the chief of entertainment media for the United States Department of Defense. In his interview with Vice, he said that when they read the script for a movie, they look for a couple of different things. Firstly, they want to make sure there's nothing classified in the script, that it's accurate, that it adheres to DoD policy, and in the end, does the script adhere to the core values of the military? Robert says they try not to be domineering to Hollywood studios and want to act more like helpful military nerds that advise them as to what is realistic or not. He also added that filmmakers are allowed to portray the military without their approval or permission, but he seemed hypocritical in saying that because he made his dislike of Full Metal Jacket and Apocalypse Now clear. Moreover, any access to military location and gear gets denied if the military does not approve a film and permission to production is not granted. This is a direct quote from the interview that Vice conducted with the chief of entertainment media for the United States Department of Defense. He, on record, said that he does not believe that the military involvement in the film industry is propaganda, but rather product placement. He believes that relationship between Hollywood and the military is more of a marketing tool than propaganda. In my personal opinion, this quote alone shows a lack of understanding of how much these films impact the general public's perception of the military. Moreover, considering war movies as a marketing tool instead of propaganda does not seem to be a fair comparison. To conclude, military propaganda in films is a powerful tool for shaping public opinion and promoting support for military actions in wars. While it can be effective in instilling national pride, it can also be dangerous in that it promotes a one sided view of military conflicts. As pop culture consumers, we must be critical of the messages portrayed in films and seek out diverse perspectives on military conflicts. Only then will we be able to develop a nuanced understanding of the complex issues at hand and work towards peaceful conflict resolution. These are the references, and thank you for your time.